We have all been searching for happiness. Everyone on earth, at least every human being on earth, is looking for happiness. Everything that we do, from the minute we wake up, we're trying to figure out how to be more happier. Every action of ours, every thought of ours is associated with trying to become more happy. The challenge is, while we want happiness, and we want it really badly, we do not understand happiness. If we begin to understand happiness, it will improve our chances of achieving happiness. Because we go through life and we make so much effort, right? We live through life and we think if we do X, Y, and Z, it will make us happier. We think if we achieve this, if we achieve money, if we achieve a social status, if we achieve a certain level of reputation, if we achieve a certain amount of career growth and success, that will achieve happiness. If we build a family and we have successful relationships, that we will achieve happiness. The challenge is all of these things do give us happiness, right? When we get married, we're excited. We're excited, at least for those first few years, right? In the honeymoon period, the honeymoon phase, right? When we are in love. And then after a while, the marriage becomes routine. And then you come at a time when decades have passed and the spouses cannot stand each other, right? They live together, but they cannot stand each other. They're not each other's companion. And this could have been sweetheart, school sweethearts, right? They could have been school sweethearts. And suddenly the spouse is not their source of happiness. The spouse whom they love so much can be a source of frustration. So something that gave happiness suddenly no longer gives happiness. We graduate out of college and the thing we want is to get a job, to get a high-paying job. And then we get that high-paying job, and a year or two later, we're unhappy with the job. We're still making the money. Then either we want a promotion, we want a higher level job, or we want more money. And God forbid, 5 years have gone by and you have not received a promotion or an increase in salary. Then that same job that you were so thrilled to receive 5 years ago, the same job that made you so happy and made you feel like you're on top of the world, 5 years later, because you have not received a raise, you have not received a promotion, you are now extremely frustrated. You're frustrated and disappointed beyond imagination. You can't, and you see your friends get promotions and higher salary. You see your colleagues, you see the people who were in your team who have now been promoted. And all that happiness is gone, right? So understanding how our mind thinks and how we perceive happiness is very important. Because we all chase happiness, we all want happiness, but we don't understand how the mind perceives and its relationship with happiness. You could take anything in your, people buy a house, they buy a big house. And I've used this example, they buy a big house. And when they buy the big house, they are really so happy, right? They throw a housewarming party, they invite all their friends, then they show off how beautiful their home is, and everybody comes, they're happy for them. Some friends are jealous. It's all right, but they have fun living in that house. Until a few years later, something happens, either all your friends buy bigger homes than you have, or that house now no longer serves your need, right? So then all you want to do is now find a way to get out of that house. Nothing has changed in the house. The house is still beautiful, but it does not meet your needs. And because it doesn't meet your needs, because your expectations have changed, that thing that gave you so much happiness a few years back, now all you want to do is get away from it. Right? So there is that, that joke that says that when is a boat owner happy? They say it's on the day that he bought the boat and on the day when he sells the boat. Right? Look at the nature of happiness and our relationship with happiness. When I buy the house and I move in, I'm extremely happy. But the house not being, not going through any changes, suddenly I can reach a state where that same house stops giving me happiness. We've gone through so many examples. We've gone through examples of a marital relationship. We've talked about career. We talked about house. You take about assets. You talk about people who achieve a lot of success. You talk about movie stars who achieve so much success. They achieve fame, they achieve their movies do well, and yet they may have a string of hits, and they make a lot of money. They buy a mansion in Beverly Hills, they buy mansions in other places of the world, they fly around in private jets. So they have the life, it's the life that the rest of us, the 99%, look at, and we want that life. We want that fame, that fortune, that adulation, those looks, right? And yet even movie stars, at some point in life, some of them, of course, not all of them, can find that their happiness from their very own life has gone down, right? That which gave them, that which they chased, suddenly it doesn't excite them as much. So when we think about happiness, what is it? Why is it that when we achieve the things that we want, we spend our lives and we spend years thinking about, fantasizing, and fascinated by certain aspects of life, and we say, well, if we get that, we'll be so happy. I'll be on the top of the world. I'll be so happy if she marries me. I'll be so happy if he would become my spouse, right? We're all looking, and so many young men and women fall in love, and they say, well, only if he would become my boyfriend, she says. Only if he would come and propose to me, right? The excitement there is. You've looked at so many people and their stories, so many couples, and when the proposal happens, I mean, that is an exciting, exhilarating, happiest time, right? Then what happens? How is it that something that can give us so much happiness at one point in life suddenly stops giving happiness? And it's across the board. It's not just about marriage. It's not just about career. It's just not about assets. Why is it that happiness loses its sheen? And then we go, well, I need to now find another source of happiness. It's not a conscious, deliberate recognition. It's something that happens by default, right? We're always chasing in life. We're always thinking, okay, if that happens, then I'll be happy. If that, if I get married, if he proposes to me, then I'll be happy. Then if I become pregnant, then I'll be happy. Then when the baby is born, then I will be happy because I am tired of pregnancy. And once the baby is born, once the baby grows up to be a toddler, doesn't wake up in the night, then I'll be happy. Once the baby gets out of the terrible twos, then I'll be happy. Once the baby grows up, then I'll be happy. Once the baby goes off to college, then I'll be happy, right? Once the baby finds a job and is settled in life, then I'll be happy. Once the baby now finds a girlfriend or wife for himself, then I will be happy. Once my baby has a baby of his own, then I will be happy, right? So happiness, the goalpost keeps moving. We reach a certain level of achievement, we achieve something, and then suddenly the goalpost has moved. Happiness moves ahead. I'm no longer happy if I have X amount of money in the bank account. I want to figure out how it can grow double, right? Because my friends come and talk about how much money they have made in the stock market, or how much they invested in real estate, or how they are doing other projects. And I come back home and I'm frustrated from that social gathering, and I'm disappointed in myself because I'm not doing the things that they're doing. So we go through life chasing happiness, and it keeps running away from us. We get it for a short while and we're happy. And then it seems like we have lost it, and then we have to find something else to acquire, right? This whole life has become a cat and mouse game with happiness. Our entire lives, we're chasing it. And which is why I started at the beginning. I said, we all want happiness, but do we really understand it? Do we understand the relationship that we have with happiness? What is it about happiness? Why is happiness so difficult? Why does it seem so slippery? Why is happiness slippery? Why can't I hold on to happiness for life and say, I just want to be happy for life? What is it? What is it about happiness? And so if he were to unravel, if he were to peel the onion and say, what is it about happiness? What is it that I need to understand about happiness? The thing that we need to understand is that our relationship with happiness has to do entirely with how our mind works. In the last spiritual discussion, we have talked about worrying constantly. We have talked about the mind. And today we are talking about the mind and happiness. The mind is restless. The mind is hungry. That is the nature of your mind. Everyone's mind. It doesn't matter whether you're a school kid or if you're a 75-year-old billionaire. Everyone's mind is hungry and restless. It gets something, it gets used to it, it gets tired of it, it takes it for granted, then it wants something else. The mind is constantly wanting more or wanting different things. You can be married to your sweetheart, high school sweetheart, 30 years into marriage, and one day you wake up and the love is gone. And somebody said, well, what happened? Did you have a fight? Do you not like the person? You say, no, the love is gone. Why? Because the mind has moved on. And the mind can move on. It does not give you an explanation, and it doesn't give you a warning. It can do that. It can do that. There are people who have been doctors for 20 years, and suddenly they wake up and they realize, I do not want to be in this profession anymore. Even though that was their dream. They worked so hard, they studied so hard, and then they went through residency, and they've worked so hard to become a doctor. And then they realize, I don't want to be in this profession. I have business owners that I have coached who have bought businesses and worked so hard on their businesses. And then they reach a point and they go, I don't want to do this anymore. This is not what I want to do. Right? Because the mind can change its preference. The mind can change its preference on everything. It can change its preference on what career it likes. It can change its preference on what relatives it wants, what friends it wants, even which city it wants to live in. So you've lived in some city and then you don't want to be in that city anymore. And you're listening to this and you go, well, Ravi, that's natural. Yes, it is. It is natural. It is natural for the mind to completely change its preferences. And hence, when it changes its preferences, the mind can change the definition of happiness. What made it happy until yesterday no longer makes it happy. And you cannot make it happy with yesterday's assets, achievements, because the mind has moved on. The mind is temperamental. It's fidgety. It changes, right? So you work very hard to achieve something. You achieve it and you think, well, maybe I will enjoy it. Maybe I'll be happy. And the mind goes, that's fine. I know you worked very hard, but I'm no longer interested in this. Because of the mind, your happiness is tentative, right? You have, the title of my book, Happy Soul, Hungry Mind, came to me while I was in beautiful Jamaica, right? I was sitting on a beach and that title came to me there, Happy Soul, Hungry Mind. And I was separately, I was talking to somebody who had been born in Jamaica and lived his, this young man, maybe 22, 23 years old. And I asked this young man, I said, what do you want in life? And he goes, I want to get off this island. I want to go to America. And, the people those of us who visit Jamaica, we work so hard during the year so that we can get a vacation to go to Jamaica and relax and just enjoy such a beautiful place. Is the same with, whether any Caribbean islands, you go to Hawaii, but the people who are there, not all of them, but some of them, all they want to do is get out of paradise. If those islands are paradise, right? Their mind no longer derives happiness from those beautiful beaches, from those beautiful vistas. What a view, what views, right? Their mind doesn't find happiness in the waves. Their mind has already moved on, right? Such a beautiful place, such beautiful beaches cannot bring you happiness because the mind no longer wants that. And that is a key point, my friends, is that when you chase something in life because you think it will make you happy, stop and think about it, because your mind can change its preference without warning. and without explanation. So then the question that you're probably going to ask me is, well, Ravi, then how do I become happy? How can I find happiness that is at least sort of permanent, that I can hang on to? How can I find happiness in life where I can be happy no matter what my mind says? That my happiness is not subject to my mind. Wow. Now that is a $1 million question. That is a $1 trillion question. How can I find happiness that is not subject to my mind? And the only way to do that is to go beyond the mind. When you go beyond the mind, you begin to experience a happiness that is not subject to the mind. That happiness that is beyond the mind is permanent because it stays with you. The mind can change its preferences and you go, that's fine. That is the nature of the mind. That's how it is. But you begin to tap into this happiness that is permanent and that is beyond the mind. And that, my friends, is the purpose of life. Is the purpose of your life. Because you and we all have spent our lives chasing happiness that is temporary because it lasts for some time and then it disappears. The purpose of our life is to find that happiness that lies beyond the mind. How do we go around the mind to experience that happiness? That is the question. That is the journey. That is the pursuit. Right? Of happiness. That is the pursuit of happiness. Think about that. Think about that. When we begin to feel that happiness, that is within us, we begin to experience the true wonderment of life. And the question that you might ask is, how do I go beyond the mind? How do I tap into this happiness which is beyond the mind? The only way to tap into this happiness is to quiet the mind. When we quiet the mind, When the mind is completely quiet, when the mind is no longer restless, then we begin to experience. When the mind is quiet, when its thoughts have slowed down, when it reaches the state of thoughtlessness, over time, there rises in us this amazing happiness. Happiness that is not subject to anything in the external world. Happiness that is not subject on your career, your bank balance. Happiness that is not subject to your family status, your friendships. Happiness that is truly unattached to anything that is happening in the world. Happiness that is not subject to circumstances. Happiness that is not associated with success. Happiness that exists just for itself. And it fills you. That happiness just fills you. It fills you from within. That happiness fills you from within. That happiness is pure. That happiness is unconditional. That happiness is existing within you. That happiness is yours. That happiness is all yours. When you experience this act, when you experience this happiness, which comes from going beyond the mind, that happiness doesn't dwindle. And we all must learn to tap into this happiness that is there within us. Our lives can be so much better. Our lives can become golden if we can tap into the happiness that exists within us. That is when our quality of life begins to go up. And think about it. If you can start tapping the happiness that exists within you, that is not subject to external conditions and external events, that happiness is all yours. Nobody can take that happiness from you, because that happiness is not subject to how people treat you, whether they praise you, whether they abuse you. It does not matter. That happiness is not dependent on your bank balance. So understand happiness, understand that the happiness that comes from the external world is fleeting, it's tentative, it's temporary. The happiness that you can begin to connect from within yourself, that happiness can be permanent and it can lift you. And if you are situated in that happiness, and obviously it takes practice, it takes time. It's not as if we can turn this on the first day. Maybe some people are there who can. But for many of us, it will take practice and will take time. But if we begin to connect to this happiness that is within us, we will find that our need for happiness from external sources becomes lesser. Then external sources may give us happiness or unhappiness, but because we have our own happiness internally, we will not be held hostage to happiness from the outside. Our life will be blessed. Our life will be golden. I would urge you to investigate your relationship with happiness. I would urge you to look at happiness, to look at what makes you happy and how happiness wanes and waxes for you. Once you have that understanding, it will give you a better handle on life, but it will help you progress on the path of finding true happiness, right? We're always looking for true love. What we should be looking for is true happiness. We should be looking for true happiness. We should be looking for true happiness.